Okay, guys, so today we're going to be working on our class. When I was doing this before I started, sorry. We're going to be working today in our class number 4. I was waiting for Sarah, but she hasn't arrived, so we're going to start just the 4 of us. Ready? So the idea of in this week, it's going to be learning some very specific skills, right? I would like to start the class with a reading exercise, with a short reading, and I would like you to help me reading this part, his part. Ready? So, well, I don't know who wants to read. Who wants to start reading this part?
Me,
Okay, Maho, you're gonna read until the first yellow point. Ready? Okay, so go ahead, my dear.
late at last Sunday night, the valuable guitar of Juanes was exhibited in the
Exhibited.
city downtown. Unfortunately, right at the midnight, the lights of the exhibition were turned off and the guitar was robbed.
Exactly. Very good. The only word that you need to correct, this one, which is always a difficult word, it's going to sound unfortunately. So that part is not going to sound, so it's going to be unfortunately.
Y la de exhibited,
Exhibited. That one was, this one, it's not exhibited, but exhibited. Both sounds as E, right? So exhibited.
and valuable
Valuable, it
is
was good. It was good. Valuable.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good. Very
I
good.
like these exercises.
Of course, because you need to practice for the scripts, right?
Yes. Okay.
Good, excellent, very good. So, well, who's gonna continue
Me,
into the
teacher.
next part? Go ahead, brother, until the next yellow point.
Okay. For weeks, the rumor of a group of fans trying to steal it has been listening around the media. Nevertheless,
Uh-huh.
the guitar has been exhibited many times for the last months.
Okay, very good, good. Well, isolated, like separated, the words were pronounced perfectly, Santi. But remember that we have to sometimes link the sounds, no? For example, well, for weeks, the rumor of a group of fans trying to steal it all together, steal it. Always that we have that it or him or her or me or them, for example, after a verb, the idea is that we are going to join it with the verb before. No, so for example, here it's steal it, tell him, call her, tell them, right? So always the object pronoun is going to be linked to the verb, to the previous verb. Okay, very good. And this one, media, it's in Spanish. In English, it sounds like media, ready? Or media, as you prefer to pronounce the D, but it's media, ready? Or media, ready? And well, then nevertheless, the connector, you already know. And this verb, how does it sound? Exhibited
Exhibited.
or
Exhibited. Como exhibited.
exhibited? Exhibited. Good. Muy bien. Thank you, Santi. Thanks a lot. And the last part, who's going to read the last part?
Me, teacher.
Go ahead, Luisa. Tell me.
Nowadays, the case is investigated and evidence is collected in order to solve the mystery. Some statements have been listening so far, and they point out to a major complot in Colombia.
Exactly. To a major complot in Colombia. Very good. Ready? Careful with the pronunciation of the verbs in past when they are regular. For example, this one, in that case, doesn't sound the E because it finishes in N, no? So in that case, statements have been listened. That's it, listened. But in this case, for example, they sound because it finishes in T. So evidence is collected in order to solve the mystery. Some statements have been listened. So it's different, even though it's the same 2 letters, the sound is different. Ready? So you know. But okay, perfect. It was very good. Well, now the pronunciation was already done. So the information in the story that we just read, we were talking about a complot, or it was a piece of news, right? In which they described something that happened to the valuable guitar of Juanes, right? So the guitar was exhibited on the museum, but unfortunately at midnight the exhibition, the lights were turned off and the guitar was what? stolen. Yeah, it was robbed, right? Before that, for weeks, the rumor of a group of fans trying to steal it has been listening around the media, you know. So in that case, for some time, including the present, right? Anyway, the guitar was like has been exhibited many different times, you know, in the last month, one in Medellin, the other one's in Bogota, and here they say nowadays, in this moment, the case is being investigated and the evidence is collected in order to solve the mystery. But some statements have been listened so far, so until this moment, right? And they point. What is the meaning of point out? Point out. What is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of point out? Point out to a major complot in Colombia. Bueno, I don't know how to do that, but more or less.
Señalar.
Thank you, sí. O sea, this is more or less like a hand, ¿no? O sea, no, más o menos, more or less, it's like a hand pointing out, no? So in that case, when I say that all the evidence that is being collected points out to a major complot in Colombia, right? So what we were listening here, it was a story, yeah? So it was a story in which, well, a story which in this case it's the same as a piece of news. News, remember that it's always plural. So when we say una noticia, it's a piece of news. Ready? It's not like a new. No, it's going to be a piece of news, right? Because news is always plural, right? So, but a piece of news is simply a story about something that is happening in the country, in the world, or whatever, right? So in this case, we were talking about like the context, a little contextualization of the content of the story, right? And also we were just giving some details about the things that happened before. And also like it's a piece of news, it's something that it's in development, something also about the things that are being happening until now, right? So we said nowadays we include things of the present, right? We said, okay, no, for weeks before that, in the last month, right? So what we have here, of course, when we talk about a story, basically we're going to use many different tenses, but mainly we're going to use the past tenses and the present perfect to talk about the things that happen and finish, the things that happen and continue, and maybe a little bit of the simple present to talk about the things that are happening right now or the present continues, right? So because it's a story, no? So it's something that it's part of the past, maybe probably sometimes is going to be also part of the present. Ready? In other different classes before, we have been seeing other different kinds of tenses that help me with the description of a story. For example, we saw the past continuous and the simple past, remembering that the past continuous is used for talking about the context of the situation and for talking about long actions which were interrupted. Right? So when I say, see, I was working on blah, 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 and then this happened, right? So it's a context, it's the contextualization of the sentence, and also long actions that happen at the end, yes? Also, we were talking about the simple past, which in general terms is talking about a specific action or a specific situation, which is also always the next. So when we talk about the simple past, is what happened after. So we continue talking about the story, but when we go like in a chronological order, like what happens afterwards, right? It's when we're going to use the simple past. So for example, I was working on my project and unexpected mistake appeared, simple past. So it's what happened next, right? So they were the tenses that we saw in complement to the past perfect, that you know that it was had and then the verb in past participle, which is completely the opposite of the present of the simple past, and it's talking about the prior or previous action, you know. So it means the past of the past. When we talk about it had happened before, so when we say had happened, it's like something that happened before another action in the past. So we have the three different kinds of simple past, no, the three different kinds of past tenses: past simple, past continuous, and past perfect. Yes. Questions around it? Do you remember that part? It's something that we saw in the previous level, but I don't know, questions, difficulties, do you remember that?
For the moment, no, teacher.
For the moment, it's all right. Yes. Sarita, Pedro, questions, Majo? All fine.
Hi, teacher. No question.
No questions. Good. Okay. Well, so this was an easy part. In that case, when we use all of these situations, all of these tenses, past continuous, past perfect, and simple past, is because all of this was completely finished, right? All of those, I mean, all the details in that story were finished. Yes. If we are using simple, continuous, or perfect, it's because the action or the story is done. It's already finished, right? And of course, we have certain connectors such as when, while, and we're going to see others that we have, right? But in the story, you know that sometimes we have actions that continue until now, or that they haven't completely closed, right? So in that case, we have to use the other two tenses, which are present perfect simple and present perfect continuous, right? The present perfect simple, you know, it's simply have, and then the very past participle, I have done, I have gone, this has happened, they have found, well, different things. And the present perfect continuous is a combination between present perfect and present continuous. It's going to be the auxiliary have or has, you know, have or, well, has, of course, right? Then the auxiliary being, right? It's the verb to be in past participle, and then the verb in ing, which is very similar, no? But it has a difference, and is that when we talk about present perfect continuous, it's an action that has not stopped. It has been happening continuously. Since the moment that the action started, it has been happening continuously, different from the present perfect simple, which is something that has happened, but not necessarily continuously. Maybe it has happened different times, but in different moments, right? Maybe it started one time, stop, and then happened another time, and then stop, and maybe another time and stop. Different from that, the present perfect continuous is an action that has been going on for all the time since the action started, right? So, for example, in the example, we said, okay, yeah, they have been listened. They have been listening about different statements. O sea, they have interrogated different people. One today, the other one tomorrow, the other one maybe the next week, you know? So it has happened, but not continuously, yes? But in other example, we said, okay, yes, some different rumors have been spreading or have been listening about the media. So like every day unstoppingly, they have been appearing different rumors on the social media. So it's something similar, but the difference is that if the action didn't stop at any time, the action started and continually has been happening, there we use the present perfect continuous, right? The important thing is that in this case, when we use present perfect and present perfect continuous, is an action that is not finished, different from the previous one. These actions are not finished. These actions might be like in this moment going on, or they might be like in standby and with the possibility to happen again, right? Not necessarily happening right now, but they can have like the possibility to happen again, right? Maybe because the action is not finished, or maybe because the time lapse or the time moment it is not finished yet. For example, if we say in this week, we cannot finish this week, or in this year, the year is not finished, or today, maybe the day is not finished, right? So in those moments, also we use present perfect or present perfect continuous, depending on the situation. Ready? How do you feel? More or less? Questions? All fine?
Fine, teacher. No question.
Right, yeah, okay, good. Like a little review, no? It's just like a little review in order to talk about the different tenses that we have seen, no? All of this, what we have here, is what helps me to create a story, yeah? So it is going to help me to create a story because it includes details of all different kinds, right? For example, let me show you something here. Well, are we not read it again over here? A little bit shorter. Ready? So, Sarita, help me with the first part from the beginning until the first yellow point.
Okay. It all started a couple of weeks ago when some scientists from the ICT of New Zealand found a new discovery related to the field of genetics while they were studying a new piece of bone from a caveman fossil.
Thanks a lot. Careful, it all started because it finished in T. So it all started right, a couple of weeks ago when some scientists from the ICT, it's like an institute, right? ICT of New Zealand, found a discovery related to the field of genetics while they were studying a new piece of bone from a caveman. Caveman? What is the meaning of caveman?
Hombre de las cavernas.
Yes, exactly. Like, like cavernicola or something like that, right? Fossil. Ready? So in this case, what are we doing? It's a contextualization of the story using, as you could see, found, simple past, and were studying, past continuous. No? So then we continue. Pedro, help me with the next part, my friend.
They found that your ancestors have a lot to do with the way your feeding habits developed. They have been running a lot of tests in order to determine if it is only related to the male or both parts of your bloodline.
Okay, very good. But the pronunciation was great. There was a mistake. I don't remember the word. Here, determine. Ready? So in order to determine if it is only related to that on your bloodline. Ready? Bloodline, what is the meaning of bloodline?
Línea de sangre.
Línea de sangre, línea sanguínea, or what we call
Linaje?
linaje, basically. Ready? Como tu línea, la sangre familiar, right? So in that case, they said, okay, they found, after they were studying that, they found that's your ancestors have a lot of to do, but with the feeding, what is the meaning of feeding?
Alimentando.
Exactly. So feeding habits, it would be your hábitos alimenticios, right? Develop, and in that case, we use they have been running a lot of tests. It means that the
Teacher?
test. Yes, question.
I don't understand the part with they wait or it is with they wait.
Sorry. You see, there is always a mistake. Sorry, it's the way. With
Okay.
the way your feeding habits. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Maho. So with the way your feeding habits develop, they have been running. So the test started in the moment that, or as soon as they found the breakthrough, the discovery. And since that moment until now, present perfect continuous, unstoppably, continuously, they have been running a lot of tests in order to determine if it is only related to the male or both parts of your bloodline, right? Mao, help me with the last part, my dear.
What you need to know is that other teams have failed to understand the nature of the feeding heritage.
Heritage.
Heritage. What that means?
Heritage, it means herencia, right?
What?
Herencia. Herencia, yes. I don't know my Spanish.
Yeah.
Yes, herencia.
Oh, okay.
Ready? So in that case, they say, okay, so far they have been running tests in order to determine if it's only for the male part or for the male and female part of the bloodline, no? So, but in that case, the last part starts with a sentence, which is what you need to know, is that other teams have failed until now, so not necessarily continuously, but in the story until the present, some other teams have failed to understand the nature of the feeding heritage, o sea, de la herencia alimenticia, right? So, but this is a fake story, no? This is something that I invented in 10 minutes, I'm sorry. But it was because I needed like a piece of news that used all the different kinds of tenses, no? So in that case, as I told you, we can find simple past, we can find past continuous, we can find present perfect simple, present perfect continuous, and we can have present perfect simple in different parts of the story, depending if we're talking about something that happened after that, something that was the contextualization, something that was happening and was interrupted, something that started in the past and continuously has been going on until now, or something that has happened different times but not connected, right? So in that case, it was something that I needed to show you. Is it clear how to use the different tenses to create a story? Yeah, kind of clear.
Yes.
Okay, good, very good. Yes, Sarita, no problem, all fine. Pedro, my friend.
Yes, all fine.
Okay, good, great. So in that case, what you know already, it's to create these kind of sentences, no? So kind of using the present continuous, the past continuous, the present perfect continuous, etc. But now the other thing that we have to talk about here are, like we have been talking for 4 weeks of this course, how can we connect those ideas that we have, right? Because we have the past continuous, good, we have the simple past, good, but now when we talk about a story, we need other different connectors. Of course, we can use, for example, nevertheless, like we use it in the story of Juanes. We can use the commas, the periods, we can have the WH, I forgot the relative pronouns, no? So we can have all of different connectors that we have seen today so far, but in this case, we're going to learn other different kinds of ways to connect my ideas, especially here that we are talking about stories, something that already is part of the past. Ready? So let me show you. Well, that was the example. Now, in here, we're going to find, well, now, what we have to do first is that, well, when we have a story in our head, it would be a good idea to put it out in a timeline. You know, what is a timeline? Well, timeline, which is, of course, this, no? It's like a line in which I describe the order of events of something, right? So, for example, here, I'm describing the process of how was the arrival of the COVID to Colombia, right? So the COVID was discovered like in 2018, you know? Yeah, was 18 or 19? No, 19, 19, yes? I don't remember. Well, 19, thanks a lot, yes. In 2019, then arrived to Colombia on February of 2020, right? Then my salary came down like in 2020, like in April, I think so, in April of 2020, right? Then since that moment until now, some people have been working from home, like for example, myself. I started to work from home and I haven't stopped. So in that case, it's something that today, now 2023, it continues, right? And also we could say that some merchants have tried to jump back. Well, in that case, maybe in some of them have already succeeded, some of them are still trying to jump back like to normal, no? And we just have come back to normal like recently, like let's see, 6 months ago, I think the pandemic was declared over, no? So in that case, we just have come back to normal, right? So the first part is to organize your in your mind the order of the events. What happened first? What happened after? Was it a long action? Was it something short? And then you can start creating the ideas. Okay, this one was before, so past perfect. This one is from the past until now without stop, so present perfect continuous. This one has happened in different moments, so present perfect simple, and so on, so on. But without timeline, it would be a better idea, or you can give yourself a better idea of the order of the events, right? Once that you have that, once that you have the order of the events, then you can start connecting your things or connecting your ideas with, of course, the different adverbs that we have, right? When we're talking about a story, some of the adverbs are going to be, or well, most of the adverbs are going to help me to organize my ideas. What happened first, what happened after, what happened later. Like, for example, some of these adverbs that we have seen before, when, which means cuando, no? So it's talking about two things that happen at the same time, or similar as soon as, the moment, or once, no? That were adverbs that we saw before, and they help me to talk about things that happen at the same time, no? In a timeline, two actions that happen at the same time, they can be expressed with adverbs like once that something happened, the other thing happened, or as soon as something happened, the other thing happened, and so on, right? In that case, both of them with simple past, like once no sé, no, let's talk about the news that we talked about before. So once they discovered They discovered it, comma, they published an article. Yes, so it means like immediately after, almost at the same time, right? So using the adverb once for saying like, oh no, it happened simultaneously. They found it and immediately they published the article. But at the same time, also we can talk about things that happen in different moments, no? The first ones are going to be the adverbs that help me to describe something that happened after. No, we have afterwards, we have later, and we have the next day, the next hour, like, you know, and also, of course, we have the simple after. What's the meaning of after and afterwards? It's pretty simple. Wait a second, that's it. Listo. When I say after, I can include the moment after that. So for example, when we say after the ceremony, after the class, after the date, no sé, something like that. But when we have afterwards, it's going to be a little bit different from using because we have, okay, and we had a class of 2 hours, period, or comma. Afterwards is going to be alone, you know, and makes reference completely to the event previously mentioned, right? So for example, we said, okay, the class was at 7 p.m. Right? Period or comma or semicolon or whatever you want. And then we include the connector. Afterwards, we went to eat. Let's say something like that. Afterwards, it says like, okay, after, but it's not going to say after the class. No, already mentions that it's afterwards, after what? After the event that I previously mentioned, after the class. So it's a little bit different from using, but it basically means the same. Okay, ready? Afterwards?
Yes, teacher.
Yeah, good. It's easy to use. Good. So in that case, we can have also these connectors afterwards, later, after, the next, and sorry, also with simple past. No? So after that, that happened. After the class, we went to eat, simple past. That's it. And also, we're going to have the adverbs that help me to describe something that happened previously, no? So up until then, or simply until then, before that, until that time, which means until like hasta ese momento, you know? In that case, since we're talking about something that happened before, it's like almost recommendable to use the past perfect, not the simple past, but the past perfect, because of course, in this case, on these 2 cases, the action that we're going to include, it happens a little bit after, immediately after, or a lot after the other action. So it's in simple past because we talk about the next action. But when we talk about the previous action, remember that we have to use the past perfect, no? So when we want to go back in the story, we try to use always the past perfect, right? Up until then, it means like similar to like afterwards. It's not necessary to use the moment. So up until then, it makes reference to a moment that we previously mentioned, right? The same until that time, right? Or before that. So when we use these 3 kind of adverbs, we're going to have the past perfect to describe something that had happened before, right? For example, let's repeat the same example. The class was at 7 p.m. The moment it's the same, you know, but the connector is different. So the thing that I'm going to include is different because if we include a different connector, the sense of the sentence is going to change completely. You know? So we say the class was at 7 p.m. Up until then, connector, right? I had lunch yet because I was too busy. How can you use in that case, or how can you say that like, no había almorzado? Up until that time, up until then, no había almorzado. Aún, right?
Have
Have
had.
Happen.
happened.
Happen.
No sé, vamos a usar todas las que dicen have, haven't, any other? No, those two. Santi?
Had,
Had. Okay. But it's no había.
had not,
Had.
hadn't.
Had it. Careful. Remember that this one it's present perfect, no he almorzado, pero es hasta ese entonces, o sea, la clase que fue a las 7 p.m. No había almorzado. So when we use these kind of connectors, up until then, before that, until that moment, we use past perfect. O sea, past perfect is had o hadn't en este caso porque es no había, and then the verb in past participle. Ready? So I hadn't had lunch yet because I was too busy, right? So in that case, the idea of these connectors is, or these adverbs is going to be organizing the sentence, no? Organizing the story. If it's something that happened after or before, or if it's something that happened at the same time, simultaneously with other action, we can help ourselves using these connectors afterwards, as soon as, the moment, when, something like that. Listo? Ready? Questions with these connectors? They are very easy. Difficulties, problems? Oh, all fine.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, good, ready. Ready. So in the second part, we're going to have other different connectors. These connectors previously, we have seen it before. It's easy. But now here, we're going to have some connectors, some expressions, because these ones are not adverbs. They are expressions complete that they are used when we are talking about a story. Might be, for example, a news, like we saw at the beginning, or an anecdote when we are talking as a tale, for example, no? These expressions are going to have three different, well, yes, three different uses, yeah, that we can organize them, right? Or we can classify them. The first one is for starting the story. It means when we want to start the story, we can use some of these expressions, right? On the other way, it's for finishing or closing the story, finishing the story, right? It means that when we want to finish the story, when we are starting the conclusion, we can use some of these expressions too, right? And the other use is for complementing the story. Just that in this case, complementing story, right? Just that the complementing story use, it's going to be divided in two, going back or going forward. What is the meaning of that? It means that we can introduce some other complementary information, but some information can be previous to the moment where we are. Other information can be like posterior after the moment where we are, right? So depending the use of that, we're going to use different expressions over here. Let's read them, and you are going to tell me if it's for starting, finishing, or complementing the information. Ready? Sorry. Pedro, help me to read the first column, my friend, one by one.
I'll never forget the time.
Don't worry, read the expressions, and later I will do the exercise. Don't worry, but read all the expressions.
The thing you have to know is it all started when what happened was, I forgot to mention that.
Exactly. Good. So in that case, number one, I will never forget the time that blah, blah, blah. What do you think is the meaning of that expression? Starting, finishing, complementing?
Maybe starting, teacher.
Starting, very good. Yeah, it can be the first expression of a story. No, imagínense que I will never forget the time that, right? Very good. Listo, muy bien. Next, the thing you have to know is, what do you think, guys? What is the use of that expression? The thing you have to know is that, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? Nothing? The thing you have to know is.
Maybe to finish the
Maybe
story.
to finish. Guys, what about the rest? Majo, Luisa, Santi, Sara, what do you think?
Complementary?
Complementing?
Yes.
Yes, I also think maybe it's complementing.
Okay, good, very good. Yes, exactly. It's complementing. Yeah, when we have the thing you have to know is it's because we are going to include other detail. Usually going back, like for example, in the example of the piece of news, no? So we said, what you need to know is, and then we went back, we said, okay, what you need to know is that before that, other things have happened, right? But sometimes also can be used going forward, right? Muy bien, very good. Next expression is, it all started when? What do you think, guys? It all started when? That one is easy.
Starting a day.
Of course, that one is starting, no? So when we say it all started when, it's because we're going to start the story. I know it all started when I was in the university, ta, 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 ta. It's not real. Number 4, what happened was. What happened was that I was working, blah, blah, blah.
Complementary going back.
Exactly, complementing the story and going back usually, no? Muy bien, excellent, right? I can also use it for the future, like in the story, when I say, for example, what happened after was that blah, blah, blah. Also complementing, but going forward. Yeah, but it could be also. Muy bien, very good. I forgot to mention that. I forgot to mention that before that, I had gone blah, 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 blah. So what do you think that? I forgot to mention that.
That is to complement the story.
To complement the story. Going forward or going backward?
Going back.
Going backwards usually, no? Muy bien, very good. Meanwhile, which is a synonym of while. What do you think is the meaning of meanwhile? No, what is the meaning? No, what is the use?
Starting state?
Starting story? So, no. Sorry?
No? Sí, yes. Starting state.
No, it wouldn't be a starting story because in that case, when we include meanwhile, it's like we have mentioned other action and other action happen simultaneously. So meanwhile, it means like mientras tanto, no? So in that case, you cannot start a sentence like saying like, okay, mientras tanto, no sé qué, no, just, it can be in the middle, no? So it would be for complementing the story, usually going forward, no? Going what other thing was happening at the same time. Yes? Next expression, and in the end. And in the end. Easy.
Finishing.
Of course, finishing the story. Muy bien. That reminds me of when, like, yeah, like that reminds me of when I was in the beach and blah, 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 blah. What do you think?
Complementary.
Could be complementing and also could be starting the story if you are going to answer to the previous person, like which is complementing the conversation, but it's probably for starting another different conversation. Like, yeah, what you told me reminds me of when I was in Santa Marta, blah, 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 right? So it could be the beginning of a new story. And the next thing we knew, the next thing that we knew.
Complementary.
Of course, usually
Going
going
forward.
exactly, usually going forward. That's it. Very good. The same as later on, no? Well, later on, super easy. So later on, something happened, complementing, going forward. Ready? To make a long story short, that one is pretty popular. It's very popular. To make a long story short.
Starting.
Finish it.
Finishing. Finishing because when I say to make a long story short, it means to summarize. What is the meaning of summarize?
Resumir.
Resumir.
Resumir. Very good. So when I say for to summarize, it means like for concluding, yeah, as a conclusion. So we said to make a long story short, it means like para no hacerte el cuento corto, ta ta ta. Para no hacerte el cuento largo, sorry. So ta 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 happen. ¿Listo? Muy bien. Next, I have got to tell you about da, da, da.
Complementary. Going
13.
forward.
Maybe 13.
Usually starting, no, because it's like saying like, oh, yeah, I have to tell you about something that happened me to do. Also could be complementing if you already mentioned something and you want to change a little bit the subject, but it's complementary, it could be also complementary, right? And the other thing is, like, of course, is complementing, no? Complementing, usually going forward. And so finally, of course, it's going to be finish, right? Finishing the story. So look that in this case, you have a lot of different possibilities to connect the ideas in your story. No? So sometimes we can use the time adverbs, sometimes we can use the expressions complete. The idea is that you can use all of them, like not all of them in the same story, of course, but that you can vary the use of them. For example, the first part. It all started, I started the story. It all started a couple of weeks ago when, ya se vieron que puede ser todos juntos o separado. It all started a couple of weeks ago when some scientists TTT. Then I used the while, the connector, So, okay, while something was happening, then punctuation, of course, right? Also, in the other case, I said what you need to know for complementing the story, for continuing with the story, right? So the idea is that we can use all of these different kinds of resources in order to tell a complete story in the correct way, right? For example, in the checkpoint of the week number 2, the idea was to tell a story using, well, of course, some of the connectors and the modal verbs in past, no? Most of you created a story with some connectors, good, well done, right? But you forgot to mention the modal verbs, and also, for example, mostly none of you included the relative pronouns, who, when, where, whom, so it's important to try to use all the resources that we have, because if not, we're going to be using all with the simple present, maybe the simple past, but you have the resources to do something more creative, Guys, try to think, in this moment, we are going to try to think about an impressive story. Might be real, might be not, ready? It doesn't matter if it's real or not, okay? Try to think in an impressive story. Not too long. This one is too long for you, so could be shorter than that, right? Could be an anecdote about something that happened to you, or could be a piece of news. As I told you, could be real, could be invented, no problem, right? Think for a minute, try to get the details in order, try to use the connectors in your mind, think on the story, and try to express it using, of course, the expressions that we saw, ready? Not all of them, a couple of them would be right, ready? If you want, you can write it here in the chat, later we read it, okay? Or if you want to tell it, it's all right also. I'm going to give you this one, the slide of the expressions, so you can use them, ready? Ready? Somebody has the idea complete, maybe? All right. Not too long, don't worry. It doesn't have to be so long.
So teacher, I don't know. So I never forgot the time when I was my first day working in Canada, because I have to take a bus when I don't know, I took the brown box, so I arrived very late.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, very good. So you see, like at the beginning, it's like I will never forget the time. Was it? Was the first connector?
I never forget the time when
Uh-huh.
I started to work here. I don't remember.
Exactly. Yeah, very good. So you said I will never forget the time, and I start like, okay, it's a funny story, no, or it's something impressive for here. Good,
Yeah,
very good, excellent.
this moment though was funny, but after, yes.
Yeah, of course, later it was funny, but now it's funny, but before it was like very stressing, I suppose, right?
Yes, and embarrassing. I don't know.
Okay, my God. But how is the bus service in Canada? Is it good? Is it effective or not really?
It's good, but I don't pay attention. You had to pay attention because sometimes the bus have the number and letter. So I take the same number but different letter. So the route is different. So
Oh
but was my mistake. So but it's
Well, at least were they comprehensive? Like were they understanding?
yes.
Oh, okay. At least, no, yeah, agree.
Yes,
Something
yes,
good.
because she say almost cry because it's my first time. I don't know. Since that was in the winter, so I very cold. Oh my God. Yes,
Oh my God. No, see, now it's funny, but in that moment, I don't think it was funny at all.
in this moment when happened that was horrible for me. Now I smile, but in this moment almost cry.
Of course. No, good. Okay. Now I laugh. Ready? Life, laugh, but this laugh. Laugh,
Love.
which is like reír, no? So it's smile is solo como, but what we're doing now is laughing, no? Reírnos, right?
Thank you.
Bueno, Luisa, maybe an excellent, good example. Very good. Anybody else? Anybody has a different story, something that you want to tell us?
Yes, teacher, me.
Okay.
Sara and
First,
Santi, don't
Santiago.
worry.
Tara.
First me. Okay. To make a long story short, when I was in the school, I was on a sport class and I always had hated that class. The teacher gave me bad note and I lost that subject.
Horrible, okay. For example, in that case, you said like, and I always had hated that class. Another example, it was, for example, what you need to know is that I had always hated that class. I mean, it was not bad. It was another possibility, you know? So you said what you need to know, it's, or I forgot to mention that, or something different, that I had hated that class. So it's giving a contextualization of why she failed the class, no? Because she always had hated that. So good, excellent, something short. Yeah, that's it. Concrete. Muy bien, Sarita, excellent. Santi.
Okay, in my case, I went out with my family to watch a movie, and when we came back, my dog was at the entrance of the house. We thought we had been robbed because the door was open, but we didn't. Just forget to close it.
Oh, shoot. Seriously? My God.
Yes.
Good, very good. So you knew at the beginning you could say instead of starting like we went to the cinema with my family, you could say it all started when we went to my with my family to the cinema and when we came back to that. Like for the same, like for contextualizing all the thing, no? So you said like the moment when the story begins is it all started when we went to and that's it, no? So also you could say later on when we came back, just for continuing, right? So good. In that case, the idea is to include these resources, but good. I mean, the grammar, it's perfect. Try to include these resources in order to connect the ideas. Okay, Santi?
Okay, teacher.
Yeah, excellent. Majo, Pedro, do you have any stories? Impressive, funny?
Yes. I never forget the time when I was to the Coldplay concert and I had to do a line since the very morning for 8 hours while it was raining. But
Ugh.
finally, I could go in and had one of the best days of my life.
Okay, very good. That's it, you know? Excellent. So in that case, she said like, okay, I will never forget the time because it's something impressive, no? So it's something that she literally will never forget. Good, excellent. And then she uses other connectors, so like while or meanwhile, it was good. And also for finishing, so she said, so finally, so we understand that it's always almost the end of the story. Finally, we could go in, and I had one of the best days of my life. Wonderful, Maho, good. But I am not very fan of Coldplay, but I understand the feeling, no? Good.
You have to go.
No, to be honest, I mean, Chris Martin is a good singer, but the music is not my type.
No.
But
You
it's a
have
good
to.
one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Majo. Thanks a lot. Brother Pedro, anything else for finishing?
Teacher, my brother had a dog called Motas.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, Motas had lost its teeth in an accident. It usually beat the people. It all started some years ago when they went to the park and the dog tried to eat a big bone. And then they lose their couple of the tooths.
Ay, my God. A couple of teeth. Teeth, no? Teeth.
Teeth. Sorry, teacher, it's plural.
Okay. Okay, good, very good. So good, excellent. So there was like a previous introduction to the story. Then you said it started a couple of years ago when we went to the park and he was trying to eat a couple of da. Pretty good, that's it, no? So I also use then. Then is a connector, which is like, my God, important. Like it's mainly important because it's very practical for using. Similar then, thus, but, and all of those conjunctions are going to be very important in the story too. Ready? Well, people, so that was it all for today. Actually, I was late for the other class. So, but thank you for being here. Thank you for the participation, and try to include these new resources into your vocabulary, which is already very expensive. Try to include the new resources. So a couple of them, not all of them, but a couple of them, if you use them a lot of times, then you're going to start like the custom, or the custom to use these connectors, and then you will start using new ones for not always using the same one. So, but the important thing is to get accustomed to connect my ideas with different connectors, no? So far we have seen a lot of time, of influence, of, in this case, expressions for stories. So the idea would be for you to remember and try to include these kind of connectors into your speech. Okay, ready?
Okay, teacher, thank you.
Bueno, my dear people, so thanks a lot.